So we concluded last week, we were talking about the paramitas and we concluded with diligence, and we're moving now into concentration. So remember that the previous paramitas that we've gone over are how to establish yourself in bodhicitta, the desire to attain enlightenment for all beings, as well as the ultimate level. And then the next two, the patience and the diligence, are how you preserve that bodhicitta so you keep it from declining. And now we're stepping into how you make it increase more and more. So, how we make this bodhicitta move towards the ultimate, move from mind to awareness, right? From mind to rigpa. So, the first crucial point is concentration. The Lamrim Yeshe Nyingpo root text says, with the thorough intention to calm your mind, take the mundane dhyānas as the foundation. Through fully accomplishing samadhi with vipassana, enter the domain of the experience of the Tathagatas. The essence of concentration, dhyāna, is to remain one-pointedly directed inward to the nature of a virtuous mental state. Since one's mind with its movements is the root of all karmas and suffering, the application is first of all to achieve the prerequisites for dhyāna, which entails keeping your body away from busyness and your mind free from discursive thinking, harboring fewer desires and remaining content, while keeping the intention of thoroughly desiring the happiness that comes from having calmed these thoughts. And then adhere to the 8 types of application that discard the 5 shortcomings as the prelude for the actual state of the dhyāna. And by the way, we're on page 126, and we're beginning to talk about concentration. So, the prerequisites for establishing oneself in concentration is that your body needs to be free from busyness. You need some time. So, when we're really training in this, the way, if you're following the Lamrim path in a traditional way, this is often laid out for monastics or a yogi in retreat, and you would really go step by step by step, going through these stages. And so, you would do a specific retreat, dedicated to shamatha, dedicated to vipassana. We, as worldly practitioners, are kind of trying to roll all of these things into one. But it is worthwhile at some point in your practice really making some effort towards accomplishing shamatha. Now, these 4 kinds of dhyānas or absorptions, right? They are still mind based, right? We're not talking about rigpa here. This is actually exists in all the world's traditions, right? These are ways of placing the mind on virtue and then that increasing the virtue, right? And so it's not the highest teaching, right? And we'll get to that a little bit more later. If you practice at the Dzogchen level, then the dhyānas are included in that. So it's automatically accomplished through establishment in your true nature. But as Tokyo Origin says, we want to practice from the top down and the bottom up simultaneously. This is the most helpful way to practice. We want to have the relative things supporting the ultimate things. So the 4 faults are the 5 faults and the 8 applications. The 5 faults are the things that will prevent you from being able to accomplish this, being able to place your mind. Laziness, you won't sit to practice, you don't have faith, you don't have trust, you don't aspire to do it, you're not willing to put in effort, or you're inflexible because you're addicted to thinking and busyness. Forgetting is losing the object, you don't have mindfulness. Dullness is that you fall asleep. Over applying is that you just keep kind of overcorrecting and you're kind of hyper vigilant, which creates a kind of anxiety. So these things will all prevent you from establishing yourself thoroughly in the dhyānas. So a dhyāna can be divided into 3. The dhyāna of abiding blissfully in this life, of accomplishing virtues, and of acting for the welfare of beings. Um, so this is so abiding blissfully is just being having calmness in your mind and body in this lifetime, right? So the first kind of thing that you can establish yourself in by being able to do this is that your mind just naturally settles. It is able to be placed on various tasks, whatever you're doing, and it isn't moving around like crazy all the time. The second is accomplishing virtues, means that you are actually applying this to the first 5 paramitas, and it's establishing merit field in you through that ability to place it. And then finally, when it's undefiled, then it means that you're actually able to perform bodhisattva activities continuously because your mind is so thoroughly placed on the virtue of bodhicitta on a relative level. So, for the first, based on the nine means of mental stillness and free from infatuation with the dwelling on the tasting, the bliss of physical and mental pliancy, of the absence of all conceptual thinking, take the dhyānas that are common to the mundane paths as the basis, since they are the support for all the virtues to arise. So, shamatha, if you practice a lot, you can experience a lot of bliss that comes from your ability to rest. This bliss is addictive. This is not the aim. This is a deviation. It will lead to one of the formless realms, which is being, so there's an attachment to different states of meditation, and these correspond to realms in the God realm, where you basically exist in a very subtle mental body, just abiding in meditation for some amount of time before you fall to a lower realm when the merit that allows you to abide in that concentration runs out. So you're always reminded from the beginning to not be attached to bliss. That is not the aim of this. It is good. It's a good sign. It means your mind is flexible and pliable, but you do not want to think that bliss or the experience of that flexibility and calm and peace is the goal of the practice, right? That means you're just attached to peace. And it means that you are going to resist things that are not peaceful, right? And so we're trying to transcend that, right? Because bliss is a temporary experience. It comes and it goes depending on conditions. There's a kind of most subtle bliss that's part of the nature of mind, but this is very subtle and not it's not something that comes and goes, right? So that's kind of how you know once you've established recognition in your true nature, you'll be able to recognize the blissful part of that, but recognize that it's a very subtle bliss, not the bliss of the body, not the bliss of the bodily energies. When your body becomes balanced and calm, then the bodily energies flow smoothly, which can arouse bliss. And you do tumo practice, etc., that can be enhanced. But those are still the attaching to the bodily energies and have a coarse element to them. And so you don't want to be caught by that deviation. Moreover, from the first state of the dhyāna to the fourth, there are special distinctions of the preparatory and main stages and so forth. For the second, in order to attain the main part of the first dhyāna and upward, you must accomplish mundane vipassana by means of the seven types of attention. So the seven types of attention are cognizing characteristics. This has to do with basically recognizing what is positive and what is negative. Being able to recognize dharma from a dharma. Things that are, and so you're having an interest in these things, you're having an interest in what is good, you're able to begin to recognize what a virtue is, and you have an inclination towards that on a coarse mental level, right? This is just the very first step. Then you have interest. This is where you actually begin to absorb, right? So recognize that we're not talking about just the ability to like temporarily place your mind on a virtue and like get something from it. That's part of it. But there's a deeper recognition part that's going on here that has to do with what you really are. So as your interest in it starts to focus and settle, it becomes more something you're always doing. Some part of you is always engaged in and connected to these virtuous qualities. And something beyond study is starting to happen in you because you're getting direct transmission of these good qualities through your interest. That's why bodhicitta is so powerful, right? Bodhicitta is like an interest. It's a directionality, and once you start being motivated by that intention, then everything starts to become virtuous and you start to line up more and more naturally. Number three is complete seclusion. So the grossest afflictions are dropped. The strong emotions of I like this, I don't like this, etc. Taking delight means that middling level obscurations are starting to go away and you're enjoying the meditation practice. Discernment is that you're checking for those last bits of things that are hanging on, those mental and emotional defilements that are subtle, and you're allowing through recognition for those to fall away. The basis of application is the subtlest levels of grasping are being removed, and then you finally have the result, and that means your mind is just like completely steady in whatever your mind is placed on. This being so, with the emphasis on the shamatha of the meditation state and the vipassana of the post-meditation, by fully accomplishing what is general for the Shravakas, such as the 10 totalities, the 8 masteries, and the 8 emancipations, and so forth, as well as what is not general but beyond the domain of experience of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, such as the emancipations and the countless samadhi doors, you will perfect the path of accumulation and joining. Um, so that's a lot to say. You're moving beyond all of these deviations of getting stuck in states of meditation, right? Like the Pratyeka Buddhas and the Shravakas, they're all attached to their own personal liberation. That's their defilement, right? So there's still this part of them that thinks I am liberated, right? There's a subtle sense of a self sense, even if it's very subtle, that persists. And that keeps you from attaining full liberation. And that's why we have to have this thought, I will liberate everyone else. That prevents us from falling into that trap. Um, and even though what liberating all others actually means is a little bit more subtle than it sounds like just like an external heroic activity, it's a necessary intention and medicine to prevent this thing, this subtlest I, right? We won't let it go. Like it follows us to the end. And the only way is to remediate it is to apply its opposite, which is to think of all sentient beings. So, and this also works focusing on the guru, right? So devotion also works, right? Because as long as you're not thinking about I, and your path and your liberation, then you are able to keep moving beyond, right? Because the Hinayana level, you just keep getting stuck by this I need liberation. I need freedom. I don't want to suffer. I don't, on and on and on and on. This I keeps hiding, right? And it keeps hiding in your path. So the bodhicitta motivation is designed like a special formula that will protect you and keep you going all the way through without getting caught in those deviations. For the third, that which attains the samadhi of noble beings on the path of seeing and onward is called the undefiled dhyāna, or the dhyāna that delights the Tathagatas. So we have these four dhyānas. The first is concept and discernment, right? Coarse and free thoughts are removed. Second, discernment only, coarse thought is gone. Third, bliss arises, but there's no mental delight. And the fourth is pure equanimity. It's beyond bliss, right? So those are the 4 states of absorption. They basically go from working with coarse thoughts and emotions to subtle thoughts and emotions to subtle levels of bliss to totally transcending those, a pure equanimity, no attachment to bliss or not bliss, right? You're just completely balanced. But remember, again, dhyānas are all mind-based, not rigpa. So this all occurs within rigpa, right? So this recognition of the nature of mind, as we establish ourselves in that recognition, then, as I've talked many times before, the water settles. It's a different approach. This approach is more about training your mind like a puppy, right? The puppy wanders off and pees in the corner, and you put the puppy back on the pad, and it pees on the pad, and you give it a treat, and you do this, and you bring it back, and you bring it back, and we do that. And that's how you train the puppy, and that's how you train the mind, right? You keep putting it back on the object. It wanders off. What am I going to make for dinner? And you go back to the breath, back to the mantra, back to the yidam, whatever you're doing, right? So we need a little bit of both, but we want to rely more on natural concentration than we want to rely on attention, because attention is from the perspective of the mind, right? So when you do, I am going to practice the dhyānas, I am going to practice shamatha, I am going to practice vipassana. This is the Mahayana level orientation, not the Ati level orientation. And it takes for a very long time because you're still identified with the mind, right? The mind is trying to become a Buddha. And the only way that happens is over like countless eons of purification and accumulation. But through faith and devotion and the pointing out instructions from the Lama, we skip the mind, recognize this thing that was always already the case, and then we practice from there with that awareness of the mind. And then we still can train the mind, but it's much easier to train the mind from this perspective than it is to train the mind as the mind, right? Because when you are the mind, you're very attached to everything, and everything's like clunky and thought-based and dualistic and all of this. But when you can observe the mind from the position of the nature of mind, the rigpa, right, the actual pure awareness, emptiness, and luminosity and compassion, when you are as that, then you can watch all these processes of the mind and allow them to just dissipate, which is the placement in equanimity, right? So the equanimity is naturally happening in that state, and you don't have to do so much dog training, but you do need to do some dog training, right? And so that's having whatever your path be, spend some time on the cushion where you don't allow your mind to wander. And if you can stay in rigpa, fantastic. But I don't know anybody who's able to stay in rigpa consistently. So you find yourself thinking, and you have to come back to rigpa. But that's a little bit different than coming back to concentration, right? So it's a more profound object to meditate on, but even that is quite subtle. And so for most people, using yidam and mantra is a easier place. So what I kind of do really quickly is I return to mantra and yidam and then return to the nature of mind. So that's my landing pad. And then I kind of relax off of that. I find that to be the easiest and most effective way. And what it does is it's also, as Lama Norsuk told Lama Joe, giving the blessings a place to land, right? You're much easier if your ego is becoming the yidam, then it becomes much easier to let go, right? Like Tara can let go.
Damien,
Yeah,
back up about three sentences and say again where you landed and what you just did.
yeah. So what I do when I notice that I'm distracted, I bring myself back to the deity, the thought I am Tara, right? And then the mantra and the visualization, and I just flash an image or feeling of being the deity. And then I relax even deeper into recognition and continue with the mantra. So I don't hold the image of the deity, right? Like that's dhyāna, right? To hold the image of the deity continuously in your mind and see the details of the face and all of that, and really like building your concentration ability, right? Like this is how it's traditionally done in most of the schools. But in the Dzogchen Ati tradition, Tog'o Orjin's lineage, he said, flash the identity, I am the yidam. So instead of what we usually have, we have a subtle feeling of I am Damien that comes like it's there all the time, right? It's not like verbal like that, but we have a kind of reorientation. When you wake up in the morning, there's a moment of like bewilderment, but then there's oh yeah, who I am, all my story, all those things, right? That's happening constantly. It's called becoming in Abhidharma, right? So this is the arising of the self sense. What we want to do is replace that arising of a self sense with identity with the yidam, right? And so this helps us to then be able to let go into pure awareness, because our ego does not want to let go into pure awareness, right? This seems very foreign to it. But when I'm a yidam, oh yeah, of course I can rest in my nature. You're not attached to the yidam. That's why the yidam's so powerful, right? The yidam is rainbow love, right? There's nothing to hold on to. So it seems impersonal in some ways, but full of qualities. So we kind of like are tricking our ego into relinquishing its power by training in replacing our apparent identity with this yidam, but then also training ourselves to be in our truest nature, which is even beyond the yidam, right? Which is just pure rigpa. But so that's the kind of quick process. But I do that all in like less than a second, right? It's just return, flash, let go. And that's how I do it. And that's my understanding of Tuggle Origins instructions. Um, so where are we? Mm-mm. So for the third, that which attains the samadhi of the noble beings on the path of seeing and onward is called undefiled dhyāna, or the dhyāna that delights the Tathagatas. By the power of that, you can magically produce countless body creations and thus enter the domain of experience of the Tathagatas, which entails the 11 ways of benefiting others. So this basically means that you've attained some highest levels of bhumis and are able to project out emanations to benefit sentient beings, all way beyond my comprehension. I'm not even going to pretend to know what that really fully means. Um, but I do know that there's a little bit of a taste to it, because your actions, the more you do this, start to arise spontaneously, right? So as you identify more and more deeply with your true nature, you recognize that your body and mind and actions are not yours. They're just happening, right? So it starts to arise spontaneously. Like I'm not thinking, move my hand up and down. It's just happening, right? Like I don't know how, am I making myself breathe? Am I making my heart beat? Am I making myself talk? No, all of that I am doing is a fiction, right? Frankly, we don't have the free will we think we do, right? So we're realizing that. We're realizing that, and as we realize that, then what your body mind experience starts to become that pure vision. That's then you could say that it's kind of like an emanation, right? It's there to benefit beings. Your body now is no longer an ego identity. It's now something like a pure manifestation if you're able to abide as rigpa, because you're no longer confused and identifying with thought forms, right? And so you can see that nothing is really happening because it's always been true, but you were confused, right? We were lost in the thinking, lost in the story, lost in the emotions, and so we were really caught up in the movie we're watching. But once you realize that you're watching a movie, then you can like relax and let the movie kind of play out a little more. And then that allows more love to flow, more patience to arise, more generosity to arise because you're not taking it so seriously. When we're in it, when our face is in the screen, then we take everything very seriously all the time because everything might harm us or help us, and it's really important that we deal with all of that. But as we recognize that we're not this thing that we are so protective of, then we can relax and we can actually maybe even extend ourselves to help others more than focusing around this body mind, right? This body mind is not more important than these body minds, right? So, and so as you identify with awareness, then you feel that way. You have no sense of I need to serve this first. That's a construction of self-grasping. This is the Uttara Tantra points out this is the way of the Bodhisattva is in the post meditation equal to the Buddhas who perfectly liberate the sentient beings in the world. So post meditation means off the cushion, right? So as you are liberated into this absorption, then you begin to be able to benefit beings because you're no longer attached to your self identity. All the foregoing paramitas should be embraced by the knowledge that does not conceptualize the three spheres. The three spheres are the one who's giving, the one who's receiving, and the object being given, right? So, what makes a paramita is it doesn't, one of the factors is it doesn't have those three things. Those three things make things ordinary. Generosity, for example, ordinary generosity, I give you this, right? There's a very strong subject, object, and thing being transferred. In a paramita, there's no conception of I, there's no conception of what you're giving, and there's no conception of who's receiving. It just is a spontaneous fluid action that happens in space with no attachment around it. So that makes it a paramita instead of ordinary virtues. And free from the clinging and expectation. So you're not expecting any result. You're not trying to give generosity so that you attain something or so that you feel good or so that the person does something nice for you. You have no expectations whatsoever because you're not caught up in a self sense. It's just a natural, spontaneous activity. Like I said, the same way the hand takes care of the knee, right? When you hurt your knee and your hand goes there to rub it, your hand isn't being compassionate and a good bodhisattva. It just automatically serves the knee. Well, why does it serve the knee? The hand is not the knee because it knows it's connected and interdependent, right? And that's also true of all of us, right? And everything. So we spontaneously serve everything because everything is interconnected. And as you know that interconnection deeply, then you don't have to tell the hand to rub the knee, it just will. When suffering arises, compassion responds. That's why it's in our nature, right? Like we say that compassion's part of rigpa. It's not a contrived thing. You don't have to think, I will be a good boy and I will help people when they are suffering, right? Like you don't have to think that. You just do because the hand reaches to the knee, right? It's just automatic because it knows there's no separation. Finally, they should be increased by non-conceptual dedication and endowed with the means that is purified by emptiness and compassion. So we dedicate the merit, this a lot. So we're really making sure we're not attached to the results of this action, right? So after we notice we've done something positive, then we say if any merit arose from that action that seemed positive, I give that away to all Buddhas to benefit sentient beings. That way, we don't try to keep that little piece of self-personal, ooh, look what I did, feeling that keeps corrupting us, right? So we just give it away to the Buddhas and we let it go, and then it's not tainted. And then it can benefit without the taint. As soon as we hold on to it, it's tainted and it's a temporary virtue, right? It's no longer a paramita. It's just a ordinary virtue. And it's purified by emptiness and compassion, right? So the highest understanding of that there's nothing here to hold on to, and the desire to respond to whatever suffering's in front of you, that keeps it from being unclean. So that's the end of the dhyāna section. Does anybody have any questions about that? It's a vast, vast topic, and I'm frankly not an expert in it whatsoever. Um, there's some teachers out there like Alan Wallace, et cetera, who really emphasize this stuff. All of my teachers really have not because they're all Dzogchen oriented. So the only piece that my teachers have really emphasized is that we need to have some shamatha, the ability, just the dog training of our mind. We need to have some vipassana. So, like recognizing the nature of mind is inherently vipassana, right? Clear seeing, right? You're looking at your nature and you're resolving what it is. That's the ultimate vipassana, right? We can have vipassana in a lot of things. You can have insight into many different things. The traditional method would be to like scan your body and look for a self, right? Is there a self somewhere in this body? Then you look in your mind. Is there somewhere in there? Is there somewhere in my memories? You can examine all of the things that we normally associate with our identity and try to find a self in there. And that's how we traditionally like really apply Vipassana. But as I said, when we get the pointing out and if we have faith and devotion, then that recognition resolves all of it. Yes, Vivian.
I'd like to go back to the thing about being addicted to bliss.
Hmm.
I think I am.
Uh-huh.
And the bliss of being devoted to a lama or being devoted to Guru Rinpoche.
Hmm.
And I I heard that one. I don't understand why move beyond that. Like why I don't really get why I have to become the Yidam because it's so wonderful to um just not a lot of separation, but just that little bit where you can bow down.
Hmm.
Like
Well, you
I
just don't
don't
want to
get it.
be
I
the thing.
don't get it why yeah, I even want to be enlightened.
Well, there's a certain kind of wisdom in that. It depends on your motivation, right? So if it's just trust, then it doesn't matter if you feel great or you feel like crap, right? You should just trust, right? Like if it was real devotion, it wouldn't be dependent on how you felt at all. You could be like after a car wreck with like six broken bones and still be just trusting completely the guru, right? And that would be, but there has to be the union, right? So we have the empowerment and the bliss, and but there has to be this point where you recognize the inseparability, right? Because otherwise you stay dualistic. You're forever trapped apart from the guru. You don't ever get what you're the object of your longing, right? The good news is we get the object of our longing and it's our nature. The thing that's appearing to us apparently as Guru Rinpoche, as our Lama, is our nature. That's the truth of it. It's not true that it's a separate being out there who's going to take care of us, right? That's the eternalist position of the Christian model, et cetera, the Islam, that there's a separate being who's taking care of you, who, if you do what they say, et cetera, will protect you, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's an inherently dualistic framework. And it falls apart philosophically really, really quickly, right? Because yeah, I'm sure you know all the
I,
things. If
I, I, it's more like in my head, I can get that,
Yeah,
but in my feeling level,
yeah.
I don't really get it. And maybe it's just because I don't have the experience really of emptiness. Maybe I really don't know that experience of that clarity of emptiness. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, the clarity of the emptiness is what's experiencing the bliss. The bliss is an object
Yeah,
arising in awareness, right? And it
right.
comes, it goes, right? So instead of grasping at that, like it's a sign, right? It's a good sign of experience, but you can't hold on to that. Otherwise, you're going to be like trying to be reborn in that situation. You'll be neglecting others, trying to protect it. All kinds of non-virtue will happen through attachment, right? Anytime we attach, then there's an I who's attached and the object, and then there's like a go away. We become Gollum, right? My precious, and we have to protect it, right? Because whatever it is we like, whether it's, food, money, sex, or even spiritual bliss, the downside of attachment is that we then start to harm others to protect our attachment,
Hmm.
right? Because we
So,
fear losing it.
what is it okay if I don't want to take all the time, so maybe we should.
Like I always say, if you have a question, others have your question.
Oh, well,
Okay?
I do. So, I'm not sure. I don't want to keep it still. I actually love longing.
Yes. Yeah. No, there's
So,
nothing wrong with
it's
that.
like I want to hold it. It's that I don't even know how to explain it, but I don't really have that much of a desire to just to lose the longing.
Well, you don't have to
I
lose the
don't
love.
really,
It
I don't know how
really
to
yoga
put
is the
this. I
process.
really don't know what I'm saying. I
I
just,
know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. There's not, it's like saying you love love, right? Like
yeah,
these are characteristics of it's just get rid of the objects. What does it feel like to long with no object?
huh. I know that one, I think.
So that's it, right?
Okay.
So you're touching into the nature of mind of devotion, right? So
That was
the
beautiful. That was you just,
good.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank,
my
Damien,
pleasure.
let me say, this might be the other side of whatever Vivian's talking about. Every time I hear somebody talk about bliss, I feel disappointed in some way because I don't know that I feel any kind of thing that I call bliss.
Yeah. Yeah, bliss, on one hand, it's some people have it more than others, number one. Number two, it's a little bit something you have to train in. The channels have to be really opened. Hatha yoga, tumo practice, these can enhance the experience of bliss, but essentially it's the pleasurable feeling that arises from a calm mind and the smooth flow of energy in your body. When that happens, there's a subtle bliss. It's similar to the sex act, right? The bliss that you experience from that, but it's subtler and it's just the bliss of your own body energy, right? And the union with that experience of that. But it's not a requirement at all. Some people it's not emphasized. Many of the great masters who are more like insight oriented or manjushri don't talk about bliss at all. Some of them even kind of like don't really like bliss. They think it's like completely not something to focus on. So some people are much more oriented towards insight, clarity, and there's nothing wrong with that. Bliss is just one factor, right? There's three major flavors of the nature of mind: bliss, clarity, non-thought. They are temporary echoes of that nature, right? And as I said, they're not permanent. They're not like exactly it, but they're kind of the thing. And everybody tends to have one of those kind of be their predominant spiritual fruit. They either have long periods of no thinking, or they have really vivid clarity, or they have bliss. And there's no need to like worry about that at all.
Let me,
Don't feel like you're missing out.
well, I'll say, I mean, okay, the best feeling that I have uh, is when my Martha and I connect, not sexually, we just connect. Somehow we share moments
Mhm.
that are filled and fulfilled and exquisitely kind and wonderful. There's no thoughts. We're not even thinking of ourselves, I don't think, at the moment. There's something greater than us even that we're in that moment. And whatever that unionness is that happens in those moments is what we've felt for the last 50 plus years. That just comes of its own accord, so to speak. And of course, if we're mostly me, calm and not self-focused and just letting be, then there's an experience, or maybe I don't know what else to call it. So I don't know if that's one of those three things you're talking about or why I'm exactly saying it. But
That's bliss,
but what we
100%.
but what we share, those moments, they transcend everything material. I mean, just it's something. So I'm not trying to tout the two of us in some way, because it's really something that's coming from the all that is what we would call it. Something
Yeah.
much greater than us individually. We're not creating it or claiming it or anything. So I don't know what that means, but I thought I'd throw it out.
Yeah, bliss in a lot of ways is synonymous with love, right? When we say love, a lot of the times we're referring to the warm, connected feeling, right? That we feel. And if we have it towards our beloved or our guru or whatever, as long as we feel it and then like kind of open and relax and it's not focused on an object, that's it, right? It's just pure love without an object, pure devotion without an object. That's it. That is bliss. The flowing of your energy in your body is the warmth, the radiance, the feeling of connection, the feeling of openness, all of that. That's it. You're spot on. The way you were describing it is spot on.
So what's the big deal? I mean, why is it so touted? What's the significance, so to speak, or are we
Because just
talking
like you
about it?
said, it opens you to the all, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it's a gateway. That's why it's touted.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So people find a gateway. Their gateway might be insight, that might be love, bliss, and it might be non-thought. Those are things that we kind of train in to some degree as a way of entering into rigpa. So it's a method.
Yeah, yeah. I get that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I'd say like always says, "Oh, that's how you said it. That time it got me."
Okay, good.
Thank
So
you.
Martha's your guru. I get it 100%. I love it. Um, okay, anything else before we move into knowledge? Okay, moving forward. Top of page 128. Knowledge. The Lamrim Yeshe Nyingpo root text says, by means of the intelligence that fully discerns phenomena, first comprehend the words of all teachings through learning. Next, seek an understanding of their meaning through reflection, and finally realize the meaning through meditation. This is how we come to realization of anything, from the most mundane level of learning to the highest levels of spiritual understanding. We first apprehend the knowledge, we get the words, then we reflect on them through logic and our own experience, and then we abide in them through a meditation, whether we're sitting in meditation or just resting our mind on them, and then we grok it, right? Yeah, that term grok, like it's when you gnosis, when the knowledge becomes, when you have the aha moment, that's when the meditation like took hold of it. So this is telling you when you want to learn anything, whether it's Dharma or otherwise, how you approach it. First, you study it through learning, then you reflect on it, think about it. How is this true? So like the four thoughts that turn the mind toward the Dharma. People always like, they're an important thing, but like, how do I work with them? Well, first you read them, you read about them, and you do that a lot. And then you think about how they are true or not. Challenge them, you wrestle with them. How does this work? Is this true? Am I going to die someday? Is this opportunity precious? How long might I live? What happens when I act a certain way? How does it change my life? You spend time reflecting, chewing on them, and over time that reflection allows your mind to kind of, as we were talking about the dhyāna, where your mind just kind of rests on them. It becomes something in the background of your mind, right? When you really work with these things, then you're kind of like always subtly aware of it. Eventually it becomes an aha. And then now it's part of you and it can never be taken away, right? Because you now see directly, you've gained insight, vipassana, into the truth of what is stated. And the Buddha was very clear. Any Buddhist teaching from the very beginning levels of the direct sutras all the way through the tantras, pith instructions, and termas, you should do this with them. He's never said believe anything. He said think about it, check it, wrestle with it, see if it's true. He never asked you to just accept something wholesale. So this is how we come to knowledge. The essence of knowledge is intelligence that fully discerns all phenomena. Its actual form comprises the state of Buddhahood, but here I shall describe how to develop the knowledge through its cause, discriminating intelligence. According to Nagarjuna, if you possess learning and reflection, the two things that develop knowledge, from that meditation will fully result, and therefrom you attain unexcelled accomplishment. So as you clearly see you and internalize the knowledge, and then it becomes an accomplishment, right? So through the study, reflection, and the meditation, and then eventually it becomes an accomplishment. Thus, you should gradually develop the three kinds of knowledge of learning, reflection, and meditation. And so, as it says in the way of the Bodhisattva, the three things that, or the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva studies, reflects, and meditates. That's what we do. That's the activity of a Bodhisattva. That's how we spend our lives. We're be developing insight, realization, and progressing along the path. But notice that this will explain a little bit that a bodhisattva wants to have all kinds of knowledge, not just Buddhist knowledge, right? We need to have language, logic, craftsmanship, healing, and inner sciences. These are the five great sciences, or the kings of learning. And a bodhisattva is expected to know all of them, right? So we should think that we're going to develop our ability, because they are how we benefit others and how we bring Dharma into the world, right? So we have to have more than just book knowledge and more than just knowledge of the Dharma in terms of Buddhist teachings. We have to have every kind of Dharma, which like every kind of truth, right? So those are the things that we have to master, and we master them through study, reflection, and meditation. So by developing the dhyāna, right? By developing our ability to place our mind and use our mind, then we can apply that to all kinds of knowledge. I know for myself that when I was like younger, it would take me a long time to learn things. But after training in meditation, my mind is much better at learning new things and remembering and recalling. I went back and got my master's degree at 40 years old and all of this, and became a teacher, a whole new career, a whole new profession. And it was so much easier the second time around because of the training I had had in meditation, right? Because my mind was so much more workable. I wasn't lost in thoughts and distraction all the time. And it actually, when I placed it on the book and studied the book, I was able to remember and retain more easily. So it has lots of benefits. And now you can use that ability to benefit yourself and others. For the first, by the means of the knowledge of learning, gain all-inclusive comprehension of the words and names of all the teachings about possible topics to be known. Learn everything, right? It becomes a bodhisattva is useful by understanding how the world works on many, many different levels. Having a vast, the great masters are all like this, right? Like they know so much more than just Buddhism, right? They have a vast understanding of a wide array of topics, because that makes them more effective teachers in every way. In brief, acquire impartial learning that is devoid of ignorance about any topic of knowledge. The mundane types of knowledge, such as language, logic, craftsmanship, healing, and so forth, and the super mundane knowledge, which is understanding the well-spoken words of the Buddha and the treatises that explain their meaning. These are the causes that are named after the result. For the second, do not let this learning remain in acceptance with blind faith, but next, by the reflection of analyzing and minutely examining, strive to gain a correct understanding of the profound meaning, such as the two truths of expedient and definitive meaning, relative and ultimate, by means of possessing authentic scriptural statements, factual reasoning, and non-contradictory proof, without leaving your learning behind as a mere general idea. So not only should you learn things, you should know why you believe them. Right. And you should be able to explain them to others using references from authoritative scriptures of whether it be, if you're studying science, then you should be able to quote scientists. If you're studying Buddhism, you quote lamas. So you're able to use you know, whatever in the time is considered scholarly and a way of proving your reasoning, as well as logic, etc. So we want to have all kinds of knowledge and understanding because these are all beneficial for ourselves and others. For the third, finally assimilate into your being this certainty that you have gained through learning and reflection by means of adopting and avoiding virtues and faults. In particular, practice the meaning of the view through one-pointed meditation. Thus, do not let it become mere words and speculation, but acquire true realization of the meaning of the natural state. So what is the most important thing to use this on? It's our true nature. So we study it, we read the Dzogchen texts, the light of wisdom, like we're doing right now. We reflect on it and we internalize it to the point where it's no longer something just we hold in our head. It's something who we are. And when it's who you are, then you can talk about it in a myriad different ways that might help beings because it's true for you. You know it's true. It's not just something you've memorized. What you memorized is, only provisional at best. You need to have it integrated into you. You hear somebody like Chogyam Trungpa who was able to speak in a way that was like, wow, like totally refreshing, right? He was able to speak about the Dharma in a way that was totally new to the West because he had internalized the teachings, studied the Westerners, and then made a way to communicate to them that they could hear. Now that's like real Dharma, right? We don't just want to like cram the old Tibetan or Pali or whatever version of things down people's throats. We want to find how to communicate Dharma in a way that people can hear, that they can understand. I was talking to two senior students of Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche, and they're saying that nobody young wants to come to retreats at all. And my feeling about this is because we take away their phones, right? Like they won't do it. I'm serious. So we're going to have to, if we're smart and setting up Buddhist things, we should allow for phones. I think Denver Dzogchen, the way we do things is very smart, right? We do short sessions. It's online. It's very non-committal. We have to be skillful, and then like Trungpa, he had some of his students were leaning against posts in the meditation hall. So one day he'd let them did that for a while, but one day he hired a contractor to come take all the posts out. And so one day everybody came to find their favorite spot against a post to lean on while they meditate, and it was gone. And I think this is great. So, slowly you remove the supports, right? And allow people to come into it. But we can be like this in all kinds of ways, right? People can hear the Dharma they can hear. Working in a modern schools and stuff. I often talk to people from a Christian perspective. I just pretend I'm a Christian. I talk about Jesus. I talk about love, and I try to teach Dharma through Jesus words. I don't tell them Buddhist words. That means nothing to them, right? They're Christians and that's what they believe. So I try to encourage them to have more Buddha-like Christianity, right? A more sympathetic kind. And so we can do that with all things, right? That's skillful means. The Buddha taught that was very important. That there's even sutras where the Buddha talks to the Brahmins about God, right? He doesn't say there's no God. He just uses that word because that's the word they use. So we should be flexible like this because we've internalized it, because we understand it, we're able to work with anybody and speak to them in a language they understand. Otherwise, it's just not helpful, right? We're just beating people over the head. The details of these topics are found in the ornament of the sutras and in other texts, but in brief, the definition of the six paramitas is this. Any training practiced with bodhicitta, accompanied by the attitude that accomplishes all virtues included in the six paramitas, such as generosity and so forth, which is endowed with the four special qualities. These four special qualities are being free from their individual discordant factors, their opposite. So with generosity, you don't have some stinginess, right? Total generosity. Um, the discordant factors, hold on. Aids by the knowledge that does not conceptualize the three spheres. I talked about that. So we don't have the self, the other, and the object being given. So we don't attached to any of those. Having the function of fulfilling the wishes of others. So we try to do things that people want, right? We try to make them happy. We try to benefit them. We don't try to give them what we think they should have. We try to give them what will actually bring them benefit. And it also means don't give them just what they think they want, give them things that are actually helpful. Having the function of fulfilling the wishes of others, and after having done so, ripening the beings of those who to be tamed and into one of the three types of enlightenment by the means of teaching the Dharma. So this is ultimately our aim, is to, through the practice of the six paramitas, benefiting other sentient beings over countless eons. We're developing this attitude, this willingness, and the ability to train beings slowly, slowly, patiently, by doing all of these things. We're offering to them, we're being generous with them, we're being patient with them, we're having a calm, stable mind, and we're having wisdom and insight, and we're slowly leading them into the Dharma. But we're allowing this to happen in a very natural, non-dogmatic, non-preachy, just a natural discovery through love, right? Through the transmission of love and wisdom and our own nature, we can bring beings into this, right? This doesn't require any kind of proselytizing. That's not what we're doing at all. We're not trying to make people into Buddhists. That's not the goal. We're trying to bring them into genuine Dharma. And that's through love, right? We bring them into love by being love and offering all of these different qualities. Each of the six paramitas can be divided further into six generosity and so forth. So as I talked about before, every six contains all the other six, right? So let me so you have like generosity, you have the generosity of generosity. That means you give totally. You have the discipline of generosity. You practice generosity. You allow the limits of yourself. When you go for that big last bite at the brunch and you see somebody else going for it, you let them have it, right? You train yourself to give. You have patience. When it sucks to do that, you feel the sucks and you let the sucks work on you, right? You allow the uncomfortable feeling of dealing with generosity, and it makes you poor, right? You're making donations to Dharma centers and you're like, I don't have that much money. And you make the offering and it burns a little bit and you let that burn happen. That's your patience with generosity, right? Remaining in awareness. The diligence. So the diligence is that you train yourself to delight in it. You delight in generosity. You train yourself to enjoy generosity. You look for ways to be generous. You find generosity to be one of your purposes in life, right? You have no focus, your concentration. So your generosity is done in a stable mind, right? So you're keeping your mind free from the three spheres. You're not fixating on what will happen if I give to them, or what do they deserve this, or will this help me in some way? You're keeping your mind in equanimity while you do the generosity. And then in the wisdom, you actually are in the nature of mind while you make the generous act. Then you realize there's no one giving at all, right? And there's no one receiving, and you really get the three spheres, right? Because you're not, so one level you need to keep your mind managed, and at the other level you actually be in rigpa. So this is how you can see, and it's worth going through this in your life, thinking about the six paramitas in each of the six paramitas, right? It's really amazing, really beautiful. Thus, the generosity of each, such as the generosity of generosity, which means to establish other beings in the six paramitas, the generosity of discipline, and so forth for the other six paramitas. Likewise, there is the discipline of each, which means practicing each paramita without being tainted by their individual discordant factors. The patience, which means practicing each by means of bearing their individual difficulties. The diligence, which means practicing each with joy. The dhyāna, which means practicing each by not letting the attention wander elsewhere, by taking hold of it through this effort, and the knowledge, which means that practicing each of the six paramitas by means of not conceptualizing the three spheres. Thus, the ornament of realization teaches 36 types. Moreover, there also exist other divisions, such as the extensive classification in the Sutra of Good Eon. The definite number. In regard to the fact that all the teachings practiced by the Bodhisattvas can be included within the three trainings, there is definite number of six paramitas. This is why there are six and not seven and not five. Generosity frees one from attachment to wealth and that results in perfect discipline. From that arises patience, because one thereby possesses the four attributes of a virtuous practitioner. These three are included in the supreme training of discipline in terms of its cause, essence, and special quality. Dhyāna is included within the supreme training of samadhi, and knowledge is included in the supreme training of knowledge, while diligence is a helper for them all. The ornament of the sutra states the way of the practice, the generosity of not having expectation, the discipline of not desiring rebirth, the patience towards everything, the diligence of cultivating all virtues, the dhyāna that is not the formless states, and the knowledge endowed with the skillful means. Thus, those who adhere to these paramitas should practice them perfectly. So there's a Dzogchen approach to these, and this is also what Jigme Lingpa lays this out, as I think Milarepa does also. But so true generosity is there's no grasping in your mind at all. True discipline is there's no effort. There's no one doing anything. You're just in it all the time. Patience means that you're not guarding or protecting yourself whatsoever. Remaining in awareness, diligence is you're staying in it, right? You're a continual not allowing yourself to wander. No focus is your concentration. So it's kind of paradoxical. And no conceptualization is prajñā. Direct seeing, right? Not thoughts. So this is the Dzogchen understanding of the six paramitas. So if you practice at that level, all the lower levels of the six paramitas will also be accomplished. They should all be put into practice while also possessing the six excellences. The excellent support is to possess bodhicitta. The excellent object is to be without partiality and generosity and so forth, but to embrace all objects. The excellent pursuit is to exert oneself for the welfare of all sentient beings. The excellent skillful means is to embrace the action with the knowledge that it does not conceptualize the three spheres. The excellent dedication is to dedicate toward unexcelled enlightenment, and unexcelled purity is to practice as a direct remedy for the two obscurations. We perfectly made it. Does anybody have any concluding thoughts, questions, feelings?
I I can
Hi.
say one thing that's really helped me absorb the six paramitas tremendously, and that is, and this is useful maybe for anybody that's doing
Dan,
meditation.
we can't hear. Dan, we can't hear so good.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Let me turn.
Maybe a little closer to the
Yeah,
mic.
yeah. Okay. Is that any better?
It's still pretty quiet.
Pretty quiet. Let me take off my headset, and I will. Um, just talk right to the phone. Is
There you
that
go.
better?
Yep.
Okay. So when I'm doing my prostrations, the refuge, one of the, ways you say refuge is, in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. By the merit of practicing, we say, a lot of times we just say, by the merit of practicing, generosity and the others.
Yep.
I just cycle right through each one. First prostration by the merit of practicing generosity, the second one by the merit of practicing discipline, by the merit of practicing, so you just rotate through all six. So what I've noticed is that, as I'm going through my day and I encounter certain situations, it's in my brain, it's like, oh, I have discipline. So I am not going to reach for that cinnamon roll. I I'm gonna let it go, and I'm gonna offer it, to whatever. But I've just noticed that, by just cycling through those, it really helps you ingrain those into your mind. Anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there.
That's a great tip. I love it. Yeah, these are so important. When you really internalize the six paramitas, you really know what to do, right? Because a lot of times on the path, we don't really know what to do. Like and you can kind of feel where you are, right? So they're also like, we practice all of them, but you also practice them sequentially, right? So like they lead one to the next. As we develop one, we become more capable of the next one. like the levels of concentration and wisdom are the highest level paramitas. So you should also know that they're the most important. So you don't need to go back down to, like, let's say, making your whole life about giving alms to homeless people if you're training in concentration and wisdom, right? So it's actually more important that you sit on your cushion and do your practice developing concentration and wisdom than it is that you offer alms to the poor, right? So we can do all of them, of course, but just know the priority goes from lower to higher. But we start with the lower, right? So you work your way through developing. Most important, Garchen Rinpoche said that most people need to really focus on patience, right? Because life is annoying and we're always getting like triggered and frustrated and annoyed. And so just being willing to endure difficulty, right? Like he's speaking from having gone to prison. So he had to deal with like true patience. What, like everything he wanted for his life was gone and taken from him, and he had to like make the best of it. So that's like really training in patience, and we're all in that situation in some kind of way, right? Like we're all in a life that's not ideal for what we want to do for our path, right? So we want to deal with those frustrations and turn them onto the path. Recognize that they're helping you, that the difficulties are helping you. They're helping because, and so as he's explained, patience produces more merit than generosity. So when you don't get mad, when you're getting triggered, when you let that Bernie feel happen, that's actually more powerful than giving generously. Right. So it works on you deeper. And I think you can feel that, right? Like there's more of a change in who you are when you put up with something difficult than there is when you just give somebody something and they say thank you and you both feel great. Right? It's harder to do. And the same with like training your mind to focus and all of that. They become progressively more difficult. Yeah, so I think they're really important. Anybody have anything else before we close? Thank you about each of you Buddhas. I appreciate you being here every Thursday. I really appreciate it. I enjoy doing this. Has been so beneficial for me to study this text in a deep way. I'm really learning a lot, so I hope you're learning a lot. And we will just keep moving forward. So let's dedicate the merit. Thanks, Ayrton. It's the man, the myth, the legend, the Ramana. By this merit may all attain omniscience, having defeated the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara may I free all beings. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Thank you, Damien. Awesome.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Damien. Thank you.
You. Good night.
Night, my pleasure.